You might have heard that Justice James Omotosho has just issued a serious ultimatum to Nnamdi Kanu. The court has given him until tomorrow, 5th of November 2025, to open his defense or risk having the trial move forward without him having the chance to defend himself. Before we dive deep into the main gist, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Now, this is a critical moment in the trial of Nnamdi Kanu, the leader of the indigenous people of Biafra, IPOB. And it's got everyone talking, especially with the implications it has, not just for Kanu, but for future legal proceedings in Nigeria. Kanu, as many of you know, has been standing trial for charges related to terrorism, including inciting violence and the formation of a separatist group. The Nigerian government sees his actions as a threat to national security, and that's been the basis of these serious charges against him. However, his legal team, or at least those who were representing him before he dismissed them, have been raising several legal points that might affect the trial's legitimacy. The main issue Kanu's defense has raised is that the law under which he is being charged has been repealed. They're saying the charges don't hold water because the legal framework the prosecution is using no longer exists. So Kanu is refusing to open his defense, arguing that the whole process is legally flawed. This is where things get really interesting. The court, instead of allowing the process to drag on, has set a hard deadline for him to enter his defense or face the possibility that the trial could move to a conclusion without his side of the story being heard. This is not just about one man's legal battle. This case has implications for how politically sensitive cases are handled in the country. If Kanu is found to have no valid charge against him, it could set a precedent for others who are fighting politically charged cases. On the other hand, if the court rules in favor of the prosecution and moves ahead with judgment, it could show that the Nigerian judiciary is willing to ignore these kinds of legal challenges and push forward with a trial, even when the defendant's lawyers believe the process is illegitimate. Kanu's refusal to defend himself is also a point of contention. His argument is that he's not going to give a defense under a law that's not valid. He feels that to do so would be to legitimize a charge that doesn't even exist under the current legal framework. And of course, this is a pretty bold stance to take, because typically, even if you disagree with the law, you still go through the motions of defending yourself, as that's part of your rights under the legal system. But Kanu's taking a different route, and his supporters are standing behind him, believing that this could be the key to getting the trial dismissed altogether. At the same time, the prosecution, led by Adegboyega Awomolo, has argued that the time for making such legal objections has passed. The prosecution is essentially saying that this is a stall tactic by Kanu and his defense team. The prosecution's case has been presented, and they want the trial to move forward to a conclusion. The court is clearly running out of patience with the delays, and that's why Omotosho gave this very clear deadline. Now, Kanu's supporters, especially those who believe in the Biafra cause, are watching closely. They see this trial as a symbol of their struggle for independence, and how it unfolds could determine how future cases like this one are handled in the country. Many believe that the way the Nigerian government handles Kanu's trial will send a message to other separatist groups and could even affect the future of self-determination movements in the region. On the flip side, those who are not fans of Kanu's actions view this as a final test of whether the Nigerian government can firmly deal with what they see as a threat to national unity. So, what happens next? There are a few scenarios we're looking at. The first, and perhaps the most obvious, is that Kanu opens his defense by the court's deadline tomorrow. That would mean the trial continues. Kanu presents his case and we head towards a verdict. But what if Kanu doesn't open his defense? If the deadline passes and he doesn't comply, the court could decide to move to judgment based on what the prosecution has already presented. This would mean no defense and no opportunity for Kanu to dispute the allegations against him. The court might just rule on the evidence it already has, and that could be a serious blow to Kanu's case. The idea that the trial could go ahead without him having the chance to defend himself is pretty controversial, and it's one that has many people questioning the fairness of the process. This is something that both local and international observers will be keeping an eye on, because if the court decides to move forward without Kanu's defense, It could raise concerns about the country's legal system and its ability to guarantee fair trials. The second possible scenario is that Kanu's team pushes for a further delay. We're already seeing how the defense has been stalling for months, trying to get the trial dismissed on the grounds of legality. But it's unclear how much longer the court will be willing to accept these delays. If the defense pushes for more time, the court might deny that request and proceed with the case. Alternatively, there could be appeals and legal motions, prolonging the trial even further, though this seems less likely given the court's clear stance on moving forward. There's also the possibility that the case will face international scrutiny. We've seen global human rights organizations closely monitoring the case, and if the trial is foreclosed, we can expect more international condemnation, especially if it's perceived as a politically motivated trial. That could put the Nigerian government in a difficult position, particularly with the eyes of the world on the case. If the trial is seen as unfair, it could attract more global attention to issues of governance, human rights, and the treatment of political prisoners in Nigeria. And let's not forget the broader political landscape in Nigeria. The Biafran issue is far from resolved. Even if Kanu is removed from the picture, the underlying issues that led to the formation of IPOB and the Biafran separatist movement remain. How the Nigerian government handles this case will affect not just Kanu, but the entire movement. And that's something that could have long-term consequences for the country. Whether Kanu wins or loses, there will be those who continue to fight for Biafra, and the government's handling of this trial will only feed into that ongoing struggle. This isn't just about Nnamdi Kanu, it's about the future of self-determination movements in Nigeria, the fairness of the judicial process, and how the country's legal system deals with politically sensitive cases. Tomorrow's decision could be a defining moment in Nigerian legal history, and it's one that we'll all be watching closely. The way things play out tomorrow will likely shape the narrative for years to come, not just in terms of Kanu's future, but in how the country handles cases of national importance. As we get closer to tomorrow's deadline, it's clear that this case is not just about Nnamdi Kanu's fate. It's about what happens next in the larger context of Nigeria's legal and political landscape. The actions of the court and how they proceed with this trial could set a precedent, influencing how future politically sensitive cases are handled in the country. The stakes here are high, and everyone, both supporters of Kanu and critics of his actions, are watching closely to see what the outcome will be. Now, let's talk about the broader implications of this trial. We're not just looking at one individual case here. If the court does indeed foreclose Kanu's defense and move to judgment, it could have a ripple effect. What does that mean for other activists or individuals accused of similar crimes? Will they too be denied the right to a fair defense? Will the judicial system in Nigeria be seen as favoring political agendas over justice? These are important questions to consider because this case is bigger than just Nnamdi Kanu. It's about the fairness and integrity of the entire system. Kanu has made it clear he believes the charges against him are illegitimate. His claim that the law under which he is being tried has been repealed is at the heart of his defense. If the court dismisses his argument and moves forward with judgment, it will raise significant concerns about how the law is being applied in politically sensitive cases. This could lead to a sense of distrust in the judicial process, especially among those who see Kanu as a symbol of resistance against the Nigerian government's policies. On the other hand, if the court allows him to present his defense, it will reinforce the idea that every individual, regardless of their political beliefs, should be allowed to face the charges against them and defend themselves in court. It's also important to remember the role of international observers in this case. The global community is watching how Nigeria handles Kanu's trial. The way the court proceeds could have significant ramifications for the country's international standing. If Kanu's trial is seen as unfair, it could attract more international criticism and affect the relationship between Nigeria and other countries, particularly those that advocate for human rights and the rule of law. On the flip side, If Nigeria is seen to be following due process and respecting the rights of the accused, it could strengthen the country's legal reputation on the world stage. The potential for an international outcry is high, especially given Kanu's status as a prominent political figure. Human rights organizations such as Amnesty International and the United Nations have already expressed concerns over the fairness of his detention and trial. If the court denies him the right to defend himself, we could see increased pressure from these organizations for Nigeria to reconsider its approach. This would likely bring additional scrutiny to the country's judicial system, putting pressure on the government to ensure that justice is served in accordance with international human rights standards. But of course, there's also the matter of Kanu's supporters and the broader IPOB movement. For many, this trial represents much more than just a legal issue. It's a matter of identity, freedom, and self-determination. Kanu is seen as a leader of a movement that has been fighting for the independence of Biafra. His case has galvanized support both in Nigeria and among the Nigerian diaspora. The outcome of this trial will likely have a significant impact on the movement's future, regardless of whether Kanu is acquitted or convicted. Should the trial go in Kanu's favor, it could lead to a resurgence of the Biafran independence movement. Conversely, a conviction could lead to more protests, unrest, and potentially even more calls for secession in the southeastern region of Nigeria. At the same time, there are those who view Kanu's actions as a threat to national unity. They believe that his separatist agenda is dangerous and that the government needs to take a firm stance against movements that could destabilize the country. For them, the trial is an opportunity to send a message that any attempts to break away from Nigeria will not be tolerated. If the court moves to judgment without Kanu's defense, it could be seen as the government taking a hard line on separatist movements, signaling that they will not entertain challenges to Nigeria's unity. All of this leads us to the big question: how will this trial end? Will the court give Kanu the opportunity to defend himself, or will it proceed to judgment without him? If the court goes ahead with the trial, what kind of precedent does that set for future cases? And what will it mean for Nigeria's political landscape? As we approach the final moments of this case, the tension is palpable. Kanu's supporters are holding their breath, hoping that he will be given the chance to present his case. The prosecution is ready to wrap up, and the court has made it clear that it's time for the trial to move forward. The world is watching, and tomorrow could mark a significant turning point in Nigerian history. As we wait for the final decision, I want to hear from you. What do you think? Should Kanu be allowed to defend himself, or should the court move forward with judgment? Drop your comments below, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more updates. You don't want to miss out on the next developments in this story. Stay tuned, stay informed, and we'll keep you updated as this trial unfolds.